My name is Omar. I want to explore in this democracy conference the possibility of examining interreligious dialogue in the Bahamas as a national conversation that can begin in Southwest New Providence. And I'm kind of looking at Southwest New Providence as including those areas near or around Michael Road, Fire Trail Road, Bacardi Road, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even beyond the dialogue, the goal is to see that this dialogue from multiple religions that we'll have in conversation in this presentation will consist of Christians, Muslims, and Rastafarians in this Southwest community, with hopes that this dialogue can produce community development and social change. I'd share the introduction, objectives. I try and define interreligious dialogue. We'll explore what are some pre-dialogical concerns, right? Before we talk about making a difference in the Southwest New Providence community, we're going to have to thrash out some of the present disrespect in the culture for religious groups that are not Christian. And so we'd look at the religious inequality in the Bahamas. We'd look at the presence of discrimination and disrespect and the dominance and privilege of Christianity. Then we'd look at the benefits of dialogue and how religious assets can be mobilized for the greater good. And we'll end with looking at how interreligious dialogue in Southwest New Providence can produce the social change and community development that we believe it can. All right, so I thought I'd share this map for some people who may not necessarily be aware of where I'm talking about. And so Carmichael Road is obviously this road here. Everyone familiar with that? Okay, my directions is a little bad. And you can see where Fire Trail Road connects to Carmichael Road, and you can see all the other roads that I'm talking about, Gladstone Road, Cowpen Road. So this is the community we're defining as the Southwest New Providence community. All right. I believe that we must embrace interreligious dialogue at the grassroots level. I believe this could produce social change and community development. This interfaith conversational model can explore the benefits of interreligious dialogue and cooperation in Southwest New Providence. For the purpose of this presentation, Southwest New Providence refers to the communities near or around Carmichael Road and Fire Trail Road. We're using this community because this community represents one of the larger inner city communities in New Providence, with a diverse group of religions and people. The religious groups being examined will be Muslims, Rastafarians, and Christians. These religious groups were chosen because they represent the religious demographics within the Southwest community. The hope is that a successful interreligious dialogue and partnership model would transcend the Southwest New Providence community and be used throughout New Providence in this future democratic Bahamas. Right? So we hope to define interreligious dialogue, identify the current challenges affecting interreligious dialogue in the Bahamas. We'd analyze the benefits of interreligious dialogue and show how interreligious dialogue in Southwest New Providence can produce social change. And the hope is to use this model, if it's effective, throughout the Bahamas. So the Southwest New Providence community could be a crash course. So we start off looking at some of the Muslims or the Islamic group off of Carmichael Road. The person in the middle is Dr. Munir Rashad. He is a popular Bahamian oral surgeon and one of the strategic Muslims who, after leaving school, came to the Bahamas and worked in partnership with some others to start an Islam group here in the Bahamas, and that group has been growing and thriving ever since it was started. I believe it's been since the 60s or the 70s that group has been started. And the picture to the left and right is the Jamaat Ul Islamic Mosque that's located off Carmichael Road. It's a beautiful temple there for Islams to worship. I thought I would share that with you. Interreligious dialogue or interfaith dialogue describes exchanges among religious practitioners and communities on matters of doctrine and issues of mutual concern in culture and politics. Interreligious dialogue involves meeting people themselves and getting to know their religious traditions. More formally, it consists of discussions for mutual understanding held among different religious bodies. Famous pluralist theologian Paul F. Knitter describes his experience with interreligious dialogue as the interaction of mutual presence, speaking and listening, witnessing the commitments, values, and rituals of others. Michael St. Miller, a popular Caribbean theologian and pluralist theologian, he argues that given those concerned about the continued development of wholesome Caribbean community and the development of a theological framework that takes its particularities seriously, must struggle with the issue of what is the most beneficial framework for meaningful interaction between the Caribbean religious forms with different epistemic perspectives. By this is meant the kind of relationship which encourages mutual respect and the kind of interaction which facilitates relevant theological reflection and steady movement toward integrated living. Interreligious dialogue is the only practice out of which truth can arise. Paul Knitter. So interreligious dialogue is mutual understanding, mutual solidarity, and mutual respect that produces integrated living in community. Of course, this is the Rastafarians in worship. The Rastafarians have their Bobo Shanti Church. They're off of Fire Trail Road. So we go to the pre-dialogical concerns, and I thought that this was important that we identify what has been keeping our people divided, what has been keeping some religions and people groups divided in conversation about religion. And so one of the first issues we see here is religious inequality in the Bahamas. The presence of discrimination and disrespect towards smaller religious groups. Rastafarians have been concerned about with how their hair and style has been criticized within the culture, and their support of the legalization of marijuana, how that has caused many to view them as countercultural secularists. When a male is arrested with dreadlocks, he is identified as Rasta. He doesn't have to be a Rasta, but just once he have dreadlocks, normally the naming and labeling in the media reports would say a Rasta was arrested. And, there's a lot of negative PR associated with this kind of naming. And so it made me think about the reggae song, You Don't Have to Dread to Be Rasta. Because there are a lot in Jamaica who are bald-headed and Rastas, right? And so they believe Rastafarianism is something that's in your heart and not necessarily associated with locks. So that's very important there. Muslims post 9/11 being treated as terrorists with suspected ties to radical extremist groups in Saudi Arabia by U.S. embassy officials. Muslims have also been interrogated relative to the financial support received to build the Jamaat ul Islam Mosque off Carmichael Road. And I thought that was important because when Christian churches build large churches, nobody asks them where did they get their funding from. But they asked this group because this group was being harassed a lot by U.S. embassy officials and using the Royal Bahamas Police Force to continue to harass this group. And so I thought that this spoke a lot to the inequality that smaller religious groups deal with. Bank of the Bahamas passed I think it was Fidelity. I think they passed some kind of banking policy that said persons cannot enter the bank wearing hats or head coverings. And so, what's that?
Scotiabank I know Scotiabank definitely.
Scotiabank did it as well. And so when Muslim women went into Fidelity, I think the one off of Blue Hill Road, she had to deal with the security officer telling her she can't come in like that. And we see this as a kind of religious discrimination and victimization. All right. Smaller religious groups like Muslims and others have been excluded by government and media from commentary on social and political issues in the Bahamas. Right? What's that?
Very true.
Right. Islamic community claims that the media refused to air non-Christian programs on local cable television. More must be done to help smaller religious groups to feel a part of the Bahamian society. All right, dominance and privilege of the Christian majority. The preamble of the Bahamas Constitution identifies the country as a Christian nation. Even though the Constitution speaks against religious discrimination and encourages freedom of religious expression, this privilege seems to benefit the dominant religion more, which is Christianity, since more than 75% of the Bahamian population identifies as Christian. So Christians in the Bahamas must learn to love their neighbor as they love themselves. But Simon from Bahama Pundit doesn't think this is that easy for them to do. Right? And so he recommends democratic pluralism and viewing the Bahamas as a secular state. But before we can become this evolving and emerging as a democratic society that embraces pluralism, tolerance, religious equality, we must first begin with dialogue. With the dominance of Christianity's influence on constitutional amendments and referendums, many Bahamians wonder whether our constitution is theocratic or democratic. Right? Local and international Christian denominational groups are the only targeted markets and beneficiary groups of religious tourism in the Bahamas. The appeal to only Christian groups as a religious tourism strategy communicates the truth of the privilege of the dominant religion, perhaps sending invites to Islamic, Hindu, and Rastafarian religious communities, just to name a few, could possibly be too disruptive for the religious identity. They may maybe stage marches and protests in Rawson Square and hold prayer meetings, I'm assuming. But lastly, the apparent social and political impact of the Bahamas Christian Council. It seems that this council has access to governments, political parties, lobbyists, and resources that very few non-government and non-profit groups have access to in the Bahamas. So this council is sought by governments and opposition leaders before any major decision is made in the country. Local Rastafarian and Islamic groups have expressed great concern over feelings of exclusion in these democratic and political processes. The smaller groups feel silenced and voiceless in a country that explains in its constitution that these groups have the right to speak, be represented, and be heard. And so these are some of a select group of Christian churches I've identified in the Carmichael Road area: Remnant Tabernacle of Praise, St. Gregory Anglican Church, Golden Gates Assembly, St. Ambrose Anglican Church, Bahamas Faith Ministries, Cousin McPhee Cathedral, Southside Christian Ministries, Southwest Cathedral Church of God. All right, well, so one of the first benefits of dialogue we have examined as listening and learning a new language. All right, as religious leaders globally engage in dialogue with other faiths, there is a mutual understanding that this conversation will not lead to conversion, but to better understanding of the faith, beliefs, values, and convictions of brothers and sisters from other faiths. Pope John Paul II says dialogue is an indispensable step along the path towards human self-realization, the self-realization both of each individual and of every human community. Due to the absence of interreligious dialogue in the Bahamas, we have witnessed a lack of respect towards different cultures, religions, and peoples. Dialogue empowers the individual to listen with the expectation of learning how to communicate with the one that individual is in dialogue with. Secretary General for Religions for Peace International, Dr. William F. Venley, argues that dialogue teaches persons how to be bilingual. I like this, even though this sounds very political. You learn the value of private and public language. The idea of this is that private language is the language you use when you speak with people of the same faith. And public language is this kind of language of solidarity that you speak when engaged with persons of other faiths. Like you're concerned enough to work with them that you're prepared to broaden your language if necessary. And so I think this is a very critical language. And so Venley also asserts that many religious communities have opened the door to effective religious cooperation by becoming bilingual, broadening your language. He suggests that becoming bilingual allows religious communities to not only speak a common public language, but also to act on issues of common concern. And so I had to wrestle with what this bilingualism mean. And so American Speech Language Hearing Association suggests that some of the advantages of being bilingual are: one, you're able to learn words easily. You're able to use information in new ways. You can easily come up with solutions to problems. You can develop good listening skills. I thought that was the most important one. And then lastly, you learn to connect with others. Of course, this is my favorite pope, and he is also in support of interreligious dialogue. It is my hope that interreligious dialogue and ecumenical cooperation will demonstrate that men and women do not have to forsake their identity, whether ethnic or religious, in order to live in harmony with their brothers and sisters. If we are honest in presenting our conviction, we will be able to see more clearly what we hold in common. All right, so I'm running out of time. The other benefit of interreligious dialogue is cooperation and partnerships. This being able to mobilize the resources these religious groups have in their context or their capacity, all right? And being able to mobilize these resources, speak to their need to be on common ground and to empower their community. I was in dialogue with the parish minister at St. Gregory's Anglican Church, and he was talking about how traumatized the community has been since the shootings on the Sunshine Park community, and how that church has been engaged with the community to try and resolve some of this, to bring some kind of peace and security and safety back into that community, because that minister and that church and that community feel compelled to do that kind of work. All right, and so I think that's critical. All right, so this is just an expansion more of this mobilizing these religious assets and how important that is to fight poverty, crime, etc., etc., etc. Some of the issues I thought this interreligious dialogue or this interreligious group can deal with in this community is crime, poverty, unemployment, immigration, education, and health. I thought that this group would try and work to help resolve and address some of these issues of concern because of its impact on the community, right? So obviously crime is a multidisciplinary social phenomenon, and there are a whole lot of factors that contribute to the development and prevalence of crime in this community. And so this interreligious group would be working towards that. They would have to engage, obviously, these national reported crime statistics. And I thought it was interesting that after 2013, there were no more crime statistics revealed. Right? I thought that was very interesting. These statistics are available online as well. All right, this is from 2012. They're comparing 2012 and 2013. All right, and these are statistics from 2011 and 2012. Right, and just identify the statistics with the activity of crime in the Southwest New Providence community. I went to the Tribune to confirm some of the reports on crime, just to identify the kind of criminal activity and behavior that were connected with this community and that were consistent with the statistics. All right, and so I thought, as like solutions being proposed, some of the things this interfaith group could explore is things like maybe gang violence prevention program, a community-based mentoring program, some kind of anti-violence or non-violence program. Maybe they could have a get guns off the streets program, or some kind of bring back neighborhood watch programs, or some conflict resolution program. I don't believe they should just identify what are the challenges without trying to propose some kind of solution, right? All right, so the next area is poverty. Poverty is a great concern in this community, and so this interfaith group would have to work towards trying to resolve poverty. I don't have time to get into all of this, but there are a lot of statistics out there from the Household Expenditure Survey, right, and the Director of Statistics sharing on how high the unemployment rate is at 16.2%. There are 43,000 Bahamians or people in New Providence who are living below the poverty line, and I believe a significant amount of those people live in the Southwest New Providence area because the majority of them are Haitian nationals. And it seems as if the majority of Haitian nationals live in Southwest New Providence. I'm out of time, but I'm not out of information. All right. So thank you. Some of the poverty programs I think this group could work on is feeding programs. I'm big on this idea of commonwealth and sharing. I believe organizations and businesses like Super Value that's taken so much out of this community should be able to give back. I think these interreligious leaders can work with Hands for Hunger, Bahamas Feeding Network to have food distribution centers or feeding programs to help feed the hungry and the poor. Can you imagine children going to bed hungry in that community? You know, so that's a bit disruptive. I think this group could work on that. They could do a Eat What We Grow and Catch program to encourage more farming and fishing, right? Or a community harvest program. All right, well, this idea of you share some of what you own so we can share it with those without. All right? Thank you.